Welcome to Film Strip. These podcasts are spoiler-filled as we discuss the plots, characters, and themes of the films in review. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504(c)(2), Title 17.
Welcome to Film Strip. I'm Jay.
I'm Lindsay.
And this is our review of Space Jam, starring Michael Jordan, Billy West, D. Baker Bradley, Kath Soucie, Wayne Knight, Charles Barkley, Sean Bradley, Patrick Ewing, Muggsy Bogues, Larry Johnson, Danny DeVito, and Bill Murray. Directed by Joe Pytka, released in 1996, a major hit for Warner Brothers. Lindsey, you couldn't escape this movie in 1996 when it came out. And this whole thing is in the wake of Michael Jordan unretiring from basketball, and was a way to kind of fake explain what he was doing between 1993 and 95 when he wasn't playing baseball. So you brought this one up because it's March 15th. You're releasing this. It's March Madness. We're actually going to get that this spring. And, I pitched you, like, hey, let's do a movie for March. And you were like, yeah, Space Jam. And I was like, okay, so I got to know what's the story with Space Jam?
Well, it was top of mind because I had randomly seen it on TV maybe a few weeks ago, and I didn't get to watch all of it. But I just remember thinking how iconic this movie was and how huge it was to me. I think I was in middle school when this came out, and I was obsessed with not just the movie, but the soundtrack. I think I listened to this soundtrack no less than twice a day for like an entire year. So it was just a huge movie. It was all the rage. Everyone was obsessed. And as I think you had mentioned, Jay, the popularity of Michael Jordan cannot be understated. And aside from that, just all of the other huge names in this movie, crazy. It's crazy how this movie even came to be. I don't know whose idea it was from the beginning, but boy, am I glad that they made it happen.
You talk about that soundtrack, and I own a copy of that because I worked on the campus paper, and we would get advanced stuff from time to time. And we got one of those. Of course, it had a big gold stamp on it, like for review purposes only. And I was like, that's coming home with me because I was into all of that stuff. Yes, even R. Kelly's I Believe I Can Fly, because who wasn't, believing in that back in 1996.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan, though, when he retired from basketball the first time, it was like this weeping across the nation of like, no. Now, me being a Knicks fan, I was like, finally, we have a shot. And then friggin' Reggie Miller had to get in the way, or Clyde Drexler in the Houston Rockets. But, I was big into hating the Bulls, but I didn't hate Jordan because you can't hate the greatest. I mean, he's unbelievable. And when he retired, it was such a big deal. And the cool thing for me growing up in Alabama, when he decided to play baseball, he went to the Chicago White Sox. Their AA affiliate is in Birmingham, Alabama, about an hour and a half from where I grew up. And long story short, in my senior year, for one of my public relations cases, papers, I wrote about the whole Jordan saga in Birmingham and how big of a deal it was. So this was all part of my brain, So when this movie came out, I was totally in for it because, some people grow up Disney kids, and we certainly watch Disney movies, but I would definitely categorize my household as a Looney Tunes household in terms of what we watch. Like, my brother and I would get up and watch the Warner Brothers, the Looney Tunes cartoons all the time. And we didn't go to Disney World and stuff like that. If we went anywhere big, it was Atlanta to Six Flags, which had all the Looney Tunes stuff in it. It still does. And so I'm a huge Bugs Bunny fan. Sylvester the Cat's my favorite Looney Tune character, but I mean, who doesn't love Daffy and, all of them, right? So I could watch that all day. I'm 44. I could still watch all of that. And this all came about because Michael did a couple of commercials with Bugs Bunny. Just as kind of a joke, as a Nike thing.
Right. I forgot.
And the guy that directed those. And they were like, we could do this. And really, this movie owes itself because this little movie called Who Framed Roger Rabbit happened. And people have tried to recreate that forever. And folks, I will tell you now, go back in the archives of Filmstrip, episode 10. You got to go way back. Anna and I reviewed that one way back when. You can hear what we thought about it then. But yeah, so this movie to me was like, I'm going to get Michael Jordan playing basketball with the Looney Tunes. It's going to be kind of Roger Rabbit. I'm in. You know, I was down for all of this. So I remember this one distinctly when it came out, but truthfully haven't seen it in probably 20 years. I mean, it's been a long time since I watched it before you brought it up for this review.
Yeah. I love what you said too about you're either a Disney family or a Looney Tunes family. And maybe that's why I like this so much too, because we were 100% a Looney Tunes family. Because that's before Disney Channel was standard on cable. So it was like 1 week a year you got free Disney Channel. But my parents were going to shell out the money just to get Disney Channel for us. No. So we always watched like Looney Tunes on TNT because that was free. And so that's what was on. Maybe that's why I like it so
Absolutely.
much. It's great.
This is why we're friends, Lindsey.
This is why we're both Looney Tunes families. That's why.
Yes,
yep, I get
that's what it is. Yes.
Makes sense.
But no, but it was all of this, and it is funny now to kind of look back with, you know, my cynical old age and go like, you know, there's all the rumors of why Jordan retired. He had to step away because of gambling and all this stuff. And I really think it was a lot of his dad died. He was exhausted. He was just done. The Last Dance thing that they did on ESPN last year, which I think is on Netflix now, about him coming back and doing one more run with the Bulls and all that stuff. It's a really good doc. And probably the best meme out of it is the Jordan bit about like, and I took that personally. And that could kind of like be on his headstone. Like Jordan has sort of always taken everything so personally.
Yeah.
And it's never worked out well for the people on the other side. In fact, that's even part of the plot of this movie is he takes it personally.
I'm glad. I know we haven't even gotten to the plot yet, but I'm glad you mentioned his dad because he played such a pivotal role. Like from the very beginning of the movie, you see how important his dad is to him and was to him. And just in the first 5-10 minutes of the movie, everything that happens is all because of his dad. And his dad just seemed like a really great guy. And so I think the movie did a good job of kind of putting that forward.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's probably a lot of it to get Jordan involved was he very much wanted to pay tribute to his dad. And good on him for doing that and for having that in his life. It's pretty amazing to watch. And what's neat about this and why it's so topical now is if you hang around in July and you got HBO Max, you can watch LeBron James do the next version of Space Jam with Don Cheadle and some other people. I don't think his real son's in it, but he's playing basketball with his son. Will probably be good. And there hasn't been a basketball star as big as Jordan until LeBron. I mean, Kobe Bryant was a big deal, but there were a lot of big deals when he was big. I think LeBron has kind of transcended to that moment now too, where he just sort of owns the league the way Jordan did.
And he's compared to Jordan so much. And there are those constant battles on, any Reddit type site you want to go to, ESPN too, like all of it, comparing the two of them and trying to figure out who's the best and why and comparing the numbers. Most people agree that Jordan is, one step above, but LeBron still has some gameplay in him. So, but it's cool that he's going to be in the next Space Jam.
Well, Lindsey, let's get into this. Go through a plot summary here real quick on Space Jam, and then we'll talk about the movie. So Michael Jordan is enjoying retirement on a golf course when out of nowhere he's taken captive to the Looney Tunes world by some of our favorite characters. Bugs, Daffy, Sylvester, the whole gang, Yosemite Sam. The Looney Tunes are kind of in a bind. They challenged a group of aliens called the Nerdlucks to a game of basketball after the group was sent to abduct them to be a part of their evil boss, Mr. Swackhammer's amusement park and have to tell bad jokes at a club the rest of their lives. So the Nerdlucks, though, have a total advantage because the Looney Tunes thought they were just going to run over this bunch, but they've abducted the abilities of some of the NBA's top stars, all those NBA players besides Jordan I mentioned in the opening there. And so they're playing, but they're a lot bigger, and now they're known as the Monstars. So our animated friends pin all their hopes on Michael Jordan. As Bug puts it, we need your help. And he agrees to help them against the Monstars challenge after they kind of wound his pride a little bit. So Jordan and the gang struggle mightily in the game, but they rally in the third period using all the good old Wile E. Coyote Acme products and the classic Looney Tunes gags. And Jordan negotiates with Swackhammer not only to let the Tunes alone and out of their, bed or whatever with him if they win, but to return the stolen talents of his NBA friends in exchange for if he loses, he will come and be the star attraction Swackhammer's looking for on, Moron Mountain. So only seconds left in the game and their ranks decimated by the physical play of the Monstars. Jordan, Lola the Bunny, who's the new character here, Daffy, and Bugs, and a surprise entrance of Bill Murray find a way to win when Jordan remembers in Looney Tunes world he can use exaggerated movements to hit the final bucket and win the game. He basically stretches himself from half court and dunks the basketball in. The defeated Monstars turn on Swackhammer and shoot him off in a rocket. And the Looney Tunes decide, hey, we can make friends with these guys. No reason for y'all to have to go back to work for him. So they take them in. And Jordan and his human friends return the basketball talents to his buddies, which prompts an impromptu 3-on-3 match. And we learn in closing that in 1995, Jordan returned to the Chicago Bulls to resume his basketball career. And as we know, they went on to win 3 straight championships, and the rest is history. So that's kind of the straight line. This is a short movie. I appreciate that about this movie is that it is built very much like a cartoon. It doesn't have to have a lot going on. And they get us right into it. It's very much the opening of Michael Jordan as a kid, the relationship with his father, and we get like a little mini documentary on how great Michael Jordan was.
You really do. I forgot how short the movie was until I was watching it, and I realized I remember all of this. The plot seems to be moving much faster than I remember, but it was just a really fast movie, so I guess I just thought it was longer. My attention span was probably shorter back then, so it felt longer. But yeah, I know you had mentioned, Jay, another like animation mixed with real life movies, and that being Roger Rabbit. I was racking my brain trying to think of another similar to this, and you'd mentioned a new one is coming out this year with LeBron. And I just, before this airing, saw a commercial for a new movie with Tom and Jerry, mixed media of animation and 3D or real life. But I, up to this point, I never really thought about it. So I don't know. Do you have any other movies that come to mind, or is it just Roger Rabbit?
Roger Rabbit's kind of my go-to. I do remember the Paula Abdul song "Opposites Attract" with that cat, Cool Cat or whatever, who I think was like a DJ or rapper or something. But in the video, he's just a cat. Yeah. But it's very much her and the cat dancing in a typical Paula Abdul way. And that is a good song, by the way. It is a bit of a bop, as the kids would say. So go give that a listen if you haven't heard Opposites Attract in a while. But I like Roger Rabbit is kind of my go-to. I think we've all just kind of repeated that. This often happens in commercial form or in short form. They do it in Last Action Hero, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. There's a cat who's like one of the cops or something in Arnold's land, but obviously not in the real world.
Bed knobs and broomsticks.
There you go. Right. So, but I didn't know that Tom and Jerry flick was happening as well. I think Chloe Grace Moretz is going to be in that. So be curious to see how that goes.
It looks like it might be funny. I like Chloe Grace Moretz. So
she is good. She's got an appeal. Like there's certain things she can do that I think are good. She's done a lot of intense things. Like she's really good in that Carrie remake, to take a sidebar for a second. Yeah. And she was good in the Kick-Ass movies too. But I don't know. That'll be interesting to see. That one's been done for a while and it's just sort of been COVID shelved. And so they're finally going to get it out to people to see. But when this movie came out and this was happening, this seemed to be the only kind of thing you could do in a commercial. And the fact that they took this and went full long form with it, it was a big deal. I mean, they spent $80 million making this movie. And in 1996, that was a lot of money. That's what you spent making a Batman movie, or, if you were going to do a Star Wars movie then, that's what you would have spent on it. Like you didn't spend that kind of money on a kid's movie in particular. But what they banked on is the fact that, yes, kids were going to go to this, but a lot of adults were also going to be into it because Jordan, again, was such a transcendental figure that how could you not, go and see this? And so, and they released it, in November. So, I mean, it's right around Thanksgiving time. So it was a perfect holiday film. And I mean, it was a smash. It made almost $240 million at the box office. So it was a big deal to see this happen. I also will give this movie credit for not leaning into what their initial idea was, because Danny DeVito plays Swackhammer, the evil boss of Moron Mountain. They were going to have a ton of these cameo voices throughout this thing, and because of budget and timing and all that, they just decided to not. Just don't do it, and I think that's a smart move, because DeVito is perfect as this just the evil, like, club owner, park owner, whatever he's supposed to be.
An instantly recognizable voice, too. Like, you hear it and you know exactly who it is. And they did, I think a lot of times in animation, too, they animate to look like the person who's voicing that character sometimes. So you hear his voice and the animation just matches up with exactly what you're picturing. And I think he played the Penguin, right, in Batman, which also came out kind of close to around this time. So I think he's got kind of that evil character thing going for him, and that worked out. But yeah, you're right, Jay. Just leaving it with Danny DeVito for whatever their reasons were ended up working out really well.
No, it did. And he's so good as this Swackhammer character. Like, it's so much fun to watch him be involved in this and do this kind of stuff. What I also find funny about this is Ivan Reitman is one of the producers who's, long Hollywood career. And he's friends with Robert Zemeckis, who made Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And when he decided to do this, he called Zemeckis up and said, "Hey, any advice you can give me?" And Zemeckis said, "Don't do it. That movie nearly killed me." And after it was over, Reitman said, "Yep, it nearly killed us doing this too." Like, it was a lot. What's neat is the way they shot this, which at the time was incredibly revolutionary. Is they put Jordan on a full green screen, and they had all the actors that he was going to go against, all the Looney Tunes characters, are somebody in a full green suit, and they just had somebody off stage do the lines so that he had something to react off of, and then they dubbed him later. But I thought it was neat that they gave him people to play off of, and that was actually a really smart thing to do, because normally they would just say, "Go stand over there, and Bugs will be to the left, and Daffy's to the right," and just work with it. But he actually had, like, physical bodies to work off of, which I think is smart, and I think makes the movie feel more real than it normally would.
Well, it helped him too, because you can tell that Michael Jordan is not an actor. He was in a couple of commercials and that was fine. And he was great in this movie, but he has a few lines where the way they come out, you can tell, he's not an actor. That's just a line that was on a script. But I think having the characters or the actors, the stand-ins in green suits really helped, I think. I don't know if it would have been as good if he didn't have something to play off of. Because he's a great basketball player. That's what he's good at. That's his life's work. He can't be good at everything. He was still good in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, he's good in this, but you're right. You can tell he's not a natural actor or a performer.
So, it's like Jerry Seinfeld. He's not a natural actor. So when he created Seinfeld, they surrounded him with other really good actors. And that is basically what they did with Jordan, which actually is a good segue. How did Bill Murray end up in this movie?
He's friends with Jordan, and he's friends with a lot of these basketball players, with Larry Bird and all these guys. And look,
he seems so out of place.
They wanted to bring comedians.
Okay.
He's also friends with Reitman, too. Let's not lose that. He's friends with Ivan Reitman, and as a favor, because Ghostbusters was a big deal, along with a lot of other things that Reitman produced for him. They brought him in, and he was a big basketball fan. Murray's kind of a famous basketball fan. And so to have him come in and be part of the golf course, I mean, I think it's great when Michael gets abducted on the golf course, and Wayne Knight, who's supposed to be playing like his personal assistant or whatever it is, getting him from the golf course to the next baseball game or whatever, is like talking to the whole, like, Michael, come back. We've got to make the game. And Bill Murray's like, come on, Larry. You know, they're playing golf with Larry Bird. And he and Larry get in the golf cart. He's like, I'm going to give us a 2 on that last one, Larry. I think neither one of us were emotionally prepared to play through that. And they're like, yeah, I can live with that. You know, and I loved Bill Murray's just comic peppering in this movie. And I think that's what they brought him in for, is we need to have somebody that can really carry the funny when the Looney Tunes aren't on the stage.
Just in that scene, there are a few, for me, iconic lines that I still think about years and years and years later. I still think about them. And one of my favorite ones is when he's talking to Michael about playing basketball, because all these famous basketball stars have started to like lose their talent. And he goes, do you think I have a chance? And Michael's like, no. And he goes, is it because I'm white? And Michael goes, Larry's white. And Bill Murray goes, Larry's not white. He's clear. I still think about that line like weekly. It just makes me laugh. And then later on, after Michael gets sucked down the golf hole, it was right as he was getting that picture taken. And Bill Murray takes the camera and he goes, what kind of camera is this? And just throws it off to the side. So he has some great moments.
Now, Bill Murray has, again, the right kind of comic timing to be able to keep this thing moving and keep it snappy and keep it fun. And then you got Wayne Knight, who ends up getting, you know, into the Toon land as well when Michael's meeting all the Looney Tunes and kind of in the Hoosiers basketball court, I call it. And he's the perfect kind of comic foil. And this is neat because Wayne Knight at this time is doing bit parts on Seinfeld. He's doing this. He's been in a lot of movies and stuff like that. But he's also the guy that everybody hates from Jurassic Park.
Yes.
Because that's all, that movie is all his fault. I was just
thinking that. Yep.
Yes. So for him to want to do something more wholesome, I could get it coming back. Now we got to talk about the Looney Tunes and how they get introduced here. Obviously we get our usual, you know, main ones. We get, you know, Bugs and Daffy and Porky and Sylvester and Tweety Bird. But we get a new one too. We get Lola the Bunny, who they introduced in this movie, and they ran with her for, I think she's even going to be in the new Space Jam. So they wanted to build a new character. And I wanted to ask, what'd you think of Lola and kind of the way that they bring her in here?
I liked Lola. I always did. I liked her when she first came onto the basketball court. I think that was one of the first times, because you see, it's an interesting dichotomy, because you see earlier in the movie when I think it's Charles Barkley goes and he's walking around and he goes to a basketball court and it's a group of girls playing basketball and they ask him to play. And they just school him right outright, like without even trying. And I think that that's kind of making the point that like, oh, he's so bad he got beaten by girls. But then you see Lola Bunny come onto the scene and it's like, no, girls got game. So
what I love is how, you know, Bugs does his usual 1940s, you know, hey doll, how you doing kind of thing. And he's trying to charm her like he always does. And she's like, let's see. And so of course she, you know, runs circles around him. He's like, don't ever call me doll again, you know. And I love that though, because that's a kind of gag that would happen on Looney Tunes all the time. Like they had done that forever. And I thought that was really funny. We should say too, that's all being juxtaposed with the main basketball stars who've been ripped off by the Nerd Luck Monstars. Now, and what's funny about that to me is Muggsy Bogues was a magician with a basketball. He's the littlest guy out there. I mean, he could dunk, and everybody thought he was so cool. And then you've got Larry Johnson, who was a massive, you know, up and coming star. He was a star in college at UNLV, and then was a huge star in the Charlotte Hornets basketball franchise. You got Barkley, who's his own personality. You got Patrick Ewing, who is one of the toughest guys to ever play in the middle, and had a huge personality too, and was actually a really good actor, kind of oddly enough. I thought he was much better than you would have thought. And then you got Sean Bradley, who's like the whitest, tallest, lankiest dude. And I laughed at myself because I remember going to see this with friends back in 96, and they were like, how could you tell Sean Bradley lost his talent? But you know, because he was not not the most adept guy, but he was an up-and-coming star, so at the time they thought it was good. What I love is what we keep going the flashbacks back and forth to these guys, like they go to a doctor, they go to a seance, they go to a church, they go to therapy trying to figure out what happened to themselves, and it's funny to watch them suck at basketball all of a sudden.
Yeah, and they're like, oh no, it's all in our heads, and they're just trying everything. Gosh. I actually had to look up how tall Muggsy Bogues was because I didn't realize that he was only 5'3". I had no idea. I said, that's only an inch and a half taller than me. I could have played in the NBA. I mean, if I had talent, which I don't.
I think I remember he was in a movie where Billy Crystal plays an NBA ref. And they have an aside where Crystal says, "You're the only one of these guys I can talk to," because they're looking eye to eye at each other. Because Billy Crystal's about 5'4", and it's funny. But I will say,
yeah, he is short.
Yeah, even though Jordan is not the greatest thespian, he's not asked to do that either. He's asked to be a basketball star. Or really, he's asked to be a guy who was a basketball star and doesn't want to do it anymore, which is where he was in life. So just be yourself. They let these guys do some acting and some fun. And oddly enough, they're all pretty good at it, even lanky, weird, tall Sean Bradley.
Who reminds me so much of Christophe Porzingis. That's the only thing I could think of when I was watching this. I was like, that guy looks familiar. Also, randomly, it was weird for me to see Charles Barkley playing basketball because I'm so used to seeing him now as an analyst, and it's, he's playing basketball again. So I had to shift my brain for a minute there. But I do love all of because you had mentioned Michael Jordan just has to play a guy who plays basketball but doesn't want to. And all of he's a baseball player jokes really, really hit well.
I'll give Jordan credit, too, for allowing himself to be poked fun at.
Yeah.
For that. Yeah, because everybody gets a shot at him for it at one time or another. And he's just like, okay, fine. What else was I going to do? And, again, he wasn't a great baseball player by any stretch. He also wasn't just horrible either. He was actually decent at it. I mean, for a guy to switch sports like that who hadn't played since he was a kid to go hit 270, that's not easy to do. You just can't do that unless you have some skill. He just wasn't as good as, he was on the basketball court. But I did appreciate the humor of that they let more of that go on, and that he kind of, smirked it off and sort of seemed to have some fun with it. We got to talk about, though, the inciting incident of this is he decides, okay, I'm going to play with you guys. I'll help you. But he really only gets into it when the Monstars kind of challenge his pride a little bit. And that's the thing, is you got to make Jordan take it personally, and then all of a sudden it's on.
Good for Jordan for being self-aware and really, really knowing what was going to trigger him to make this movie what it was, really.
Yeah, and what's funny is again, now that meme is everywhere. And I took that personally. And I'm like, that's been his whole life, y'all. If you think that's new, you weren't paying attention. That's Michael Jordan. Because, that's the story. He got cut when he was in high school. And they told him he wasn't fast enough to play at North Carolina and all this stuff. And it's just, he's always kind of lived with this chip the size of Montana on his shoulder. And it's just sort of how he operates. I mean, some guys, that's just how they motivate.
Yeah, and it's worked for him. I remember being in elementary school and teachers harping on us like, Michael Jordan, he didn't get on the basketball team the first time he tried out, but he worked really hard and grew 2 feet and then he made it. And you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, if Michael Jordan could do it, we can do anything. But that was just hammered into us as kids. And that's how big he was. Our elementary school teachers were teaching us life lessons based on Michael Jordan.
I think the other thing that gets lost in there too, that now because they've done so many docs on it and stuff, is how hard the guy worked.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that impressed me when I talked to the Birmingham Barons people doing that paper, as they said, the thing is the guy worked really hard. at trying to be a baseball player. Like he really did put a lot into it, and you could see the grind that made him the basketball player he was. And you talk with anybody that played with him, and they said it was just watching the guy. You never realized how hard he worked every day to make everybody better and to make sure he could make everybody better. And you get to see a little bit of that here, and it's sort of fun. And that's always been the Jordan story, is not only you got to have talent, but you got to work really hard too.
Yeah. I can't help but think of that first scene in the movie where he's up past midnight. He wakes his parents up and his dad's like, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "I can't sleep." And he's just down there shooting some hoops.
I mean, it's the way the guy was.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just how he is. It's how he still is today.
That's how greatness is made, folks.
Yep. You got to work real hard. And speaking of working hard, trying to figure out how to mix the wackadoo humor of the Looney Tunes against such a stoic person as Jordan was not an easy feat. I really appreciated how... And, there are 4 or 5 people wrote on this thing, and truthfully, probably 10 people wrote it, when it was all said and done. Having to figure out how can we make Jordan not seem so stiff and seem funny, but we don't get him to say jokes, is a real testament to the work that Joe Pytka and everybody putting this movie together did, because it comes off really seamless, and you realize it's not. It's all edited and stitched together.
So the thing that immediately comes to mind is there are 2 moments where Jordan just seems like so likable and personable. There's one that's just a shot of his face and he's sweaty and he's got this big grin on his face, and that's toward the end of the movie. But the first one before that is his halftime speech. And he starts into the halftime speech and he goes, "Hey guys, we got to do better," whatever his line is. And you hear Daffy Duck, "Oh yeah, let's hear the story." And just like, you have this Daffy Duck, terrible at Daffy Duck, folks, sorry. But you just hear Daffy Duck's commentary, like super sarcastic commentary under this really what would normally be a motivational halftime speech. And it is so funny. And then you have Bugs Bunny coming out with Mike's Secret Stuff, which just cherry on top there. But moments like that really, really helped work that angle.
I think they figured out that, we're going to have the new character with Lola, and we'll give her moments, and we'll have everybody else do like little stuff. But this is really the Bugs and Daffy show. And anytime Looney Tunes wanted to do a movie, they almost always built it around those 2 characters, because they were kind of always at each other's, they were in each other's face all the time for something, and there's tons of jokes about it. You can go look them up. But what I love is when they get sent on the mission to go get Michael's gear, from his house, right? So they have to tunnel and do all that. And I love that they are like breaking their own character. And what you're supposed to realize is you're watching 2 actors talk behind the scenes. Like, do you ever get anything from all of those, commercials we do? No, our agents are getting screwed on this. And I love that. It's like, wow, Bugs and Daffy are like having a drink at the bar and going, "Did you get any points from that?" It's neat to watch them pull the curtain back on that. And that's for the adults. Like, the kids are just like, what are they talking about? But for every mom and dad that was there, or people like me in college or whatever, it was like, oh, that's funny. That's funny to watch them get to do that.
That's great. I did notice that, but it didn't even register in my brain until now, really.
I think now, Lindsay, like so much of animation has become so adult, like South Park and Rick and Morty and Adult Swim, and all of that stuff has made that where it's not as novel. In 1996, that was like, what? You just didn't see that kind of stuff. So that's what makes it stand out, is these characters from childhood who are talking like people who have jobs. They're not just a cartoon rabbit and a cartoon duck anymore. They're talking about like their lousy contract and why are we doing this? And you have to ask yourself, like, why are Bugs and Daffy doing that work? Don't they have people to do that at this point in their career? Or did you realize that no, they don't, because they're in danger of having to work a lousy club on Moron Mountain for the rest of their lives if they don't win this game.
Yeah, and didn't when Bill Murray shows up at the game at the very end and Daffy asks him how he got there, and he said like he knew someone who knew someone, and Daffy goes, "Oh yeah, that's how it goes. Hollywood."
Yeah, exactly. Hollywood, exactly. And that's what's funny about it, though, is you can mix all of that stuff and make it go. Now, what do you make of the game? Because I got to say, that's some of the best work of the animation and of the direction of this, is how much they were able to infuse what pro basketball in the 90s and what pro basketball playing against Jordan in the 90s was like with a bunch of cartoons. I mean, that's some of the best work of the movie.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic. It didn't, again, really, it didn't feel like Jordan playing with a bunch of cartoon characters. It just felt like Jordan playing basketball with a bunch of other basketball players.
Yeah.
And apparently they built him a basketball court to play on set so that he could play during breaks, and he would play with all of the other like retired basketball players. Just, I guess, because that's what he liked to do. But it really felt like a real basketball game, toon style, and they did a great job with that. Animation is such a foreign concept to me that I don't even know where you would start in animating something like that. But it was a phenomenal piece of work.
And like we said earlier, the way they did it is they had him play against people on a green screen that then they could animate later. And so when he bounces off of somebody, they have to draw that bigger person. And all the people, what's funny is all the people in the green stuff are about 6 inches shorter, because you don't find people, 6'6" and above to do that. But he would bounce them off of him and go around him, and then they would animate the big monster to go, by him or whatever. And the fact that it doesn't look so plated together is what's amazing. I mean, we're talking about a movie at this point that's 24 years old, and it still looks good. Like, it all works. That's the testament to how well it was put together and the artistry of it. And that's kind of a nerdy film thing, but honestly, you can't geek out over that enough as far as I'm concerned. The way that all works, and Michael Chapman's cinematography and the way that they mat all that together. And again, they got a director who was used to doing this kind of stuff. He had done those, crossover commercials and things. So it makes sense.
Yeah. I think it was with 10 seconds left is when Michael Jordan learned that he could also do the toon stuff. And that was the one hole in the writing when he looks at Bugs and he goes, 10 seconds to go. Thanks for letting me know. And I was like, dude, you were literally balled up into a tiny little basketball and bounced by a Monstar. Did you really not realize that you were capable of doing all of the other Looney Tunes stuff too? Come on, man.
Yeah, come on. It would have been a little bit more, but I do love that, and that's kind of a gag in Back to the Future 3, is you're not thinking fourth dimensionally, Marty. It's Bug going, you're not remembering you're in a cartoon, Michael. We've been telling you that since you got here. Just figure it out. I mean, that's the funny part, is because the Looney Tunes, though, and I think that maybe is why I always liked them, because I'm just sort of naturally a smart ass anyway, is that they kind of are all two. And they're like, well, you figure it out, smart guy. You're the basketball star, and yeah, I love that. It's like, thanks for the heads up, the tip. But hey, it is a great thing, and it's the Jumpman symbol, it's the Jordan symbol, the free throw dunk line thing. He just does it from half court and realizes my arm can be Stretch Armstrong now, and I can just drop the ball in with a second to go. So yeah, which smart move, Michael. Good time management. Don't give him the ball back.
Excellent,
because your team is depleted.
Yeah.
So. Plus, you have Bill Murray begging for the ball, which that would have been badly for everyone.
Bill Murray actually played pretty well. He had some pretty sick moves on the court. I don't remember. He did this weird like fake pass thing, and I was like, okay, Bill Murray, he could play basketball. Maybe not against Michael Jordan, but he's got some moves. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, it's not what you expect to see. And of course, that's the big win. And what I like too is that, again, this movie it's a kid's movie. So there's got to be some life lessons to it too, like we've talked about. And the whole bit about Jordan, don't give up and work hard and all that stuff. But the other thing too is that the Monstars only got into this thing and only stole the talent because they thought they were too small to do any different. And that's when they kind of realized, like, hey, you guys are getting screwed over by your boss. Like, you don't have to take that. And that's what the Looney Tunes tell them. And they're like, yeah, you know what? You're right. And they, set him on one of the good Martian rockets and launch him back to wherever he's from. And then now they get to hang out and be friends with the Looney Tunes again, which I thought was cute and kind of fun.
Yeah. We don't like it on Moron Mountain. I love the little bit where they were like, are you loony enough? And then they do the whole like or the Looney Tunes theme, and they're each dressed up as a Bugs or an Elmer Fudd or something like that.
Yeah.
And so also in the stadium where they're playing, I loved seeing all of the other Looney Tunes drawn in there. The singing frog, I can never remember his name.
Michigan J. Frog.
Yeah. He's my favorite. I think he's definitely one of my favorites. That's one of my favorite cartoons of all time. But it was so nice to have all of these other little nugget characters sitting in the audience watching.
Yeah, that frog was the mascot of the WB for all those years that they were running Buffy and all that stuff. He was the thing, that little frog. So, yeah. That was cool, though, because who would go watch that? Of course, the people of the Looney Tunes world would go and watch the game. You've got Granny from the Tweety Bird and Sylvester cartoons over there, and she's constantly knitting something. I'm like, this woman has knitted for decades. It's unbelievable.
You have, I think it's Ferdinand is his name, the bull. Who goes, they paint I love the kid in me. Oh man, loved all the butt jokes in this movie. There was no shortage of butt jokes in this movie. And I just remember I can feel being a child and thinking that is the funniest thing on the planet. So they definitely catered to both audiences, Jay, as you've already mentioned, but you gotta love a butt joke.
I mean, they're still running them today, at this point or whatever. I mean, it's great. But Michael goes back and he's got the magic basketball to return the talent of all of his friends. And what's funny is that they're on in that practice court, and Charles is like, face it, guys, we suck. And they're like, yeah, what are we going to do now? And they don't know what to do. And Michael's got to coax him into touching the ball. And they finally get their thing back. And they're like, you want to play a little basketball? And he's like, nah. And they're like, well, I guess because he's too busy playing baseball now. They have to get one more baseball joke in there. And it's almost like that's what got him back into playing basketball again. Everybody kept joking with him about it. And next thing you know, he's off to write history again, which is, what the guy did.
Yeah. I think.
And I mean, we got to talk about, because we mentioned it too, the music in this movie. The soundtrack to this went 6 times platinum. That is insane for a movie soundtrack. Like Hamilton gets that, and Grease and stuff like that. This is just a movie. But you get Fly Like an Eagle, the Steve Miller Band song, redone by Seal. So now it's like infinitely cooler. You got Coolio on this thing. We've already mentioned the R. Kelly song, which you could not escape. I Believe I Could Fly. If you would,
Monaco is on it, who was really big in the 90s.
Yes, you got Salt and Peppa on here. I mean, you got All for One. Who can forget them?
Oh yeah.
The precursor to the Backstreet Boys. Groups like that. The Spin Doctors did a song with Biz Markie. Now, come on, that's a mashup we were all waiting on.
There's truly, I don't think there's a bad song on that entire soundtrack. You get an album and there's always, you have your 2 or 3 favorites, and then there are the other songs that you slowly learn to like. This was just hit after hit after hit after hit. It was, and there's a reason I listened to it so many times, and I still have the CD. And not that I can play it in anything that I own, but I still have it. And I guess I could find something. But it just, And now, because I listen to those songs so much, now every time I hear any of them in any context, I immediately think of this movie. I mean, the soundtrack just, I don't know who pulled it together or who the sound designer was, but man, they deserved every award. It was so good.
I mean, James Newton Howard did the score or whatever, but Warner Brothers and Atlantic Records pulled this thing all in the pile together. And, you had R. Kelly had a big hand in it, and pulling it all together. And a lot of these people, they just, wanted to work together. And I think they all knew too, this is going to be huge. Y'all.
Yeah.
Like Michael Jordan is in a movie with Bugs Bunny. It's going to work. And, I mean, for years, Lindsey, until like EDM really became like a thing, like you couldn't go to the gym and not hear the Quad City DJ spin. I mean, it was on every, loop in the gym forever. So yeah, and it still is to this day. And so, yeah, no, they had a lot of people working with them to make this thing happen. And again, credit to them for realizing, hey, let's put some real music with this to go with the score, which is already fun, and see what happens. And what happened was the number 2 album, of the year, and 6 million copies later. So it was as popular.
Played at every middle school and high school dance across the country.
Yeah. For You I Will, and I Believe I Can Fly.
Yep.
That's it. Yeah, couples skate. We're going to bring it down.
Slow dancing, leave room for Jesus.
Yeah, and then, again, I can't put over enough that Seal cover of Fly Like an Eagle. I think it's unreal because he's just got
so good.
Infinite cool. Yes, he's just so cool. And you put his cool voice on that tune, and it's like, yeah, that was a genius move, whoever came up with that.
Yeah.
So, no, it's hard to underestimate how big a deal this movie was, but does it hold up? Does it last the test of time? It's time to get final thoughts, recommendations, popcorn ratings. Lindsey, what are yours for Space Jam?
Oh, man. So I have to give this a large popcorn rating. Michael Jordan was great. Anything with his stamp on it in the 90s cannot be underestimated or underrated. And when I first started watching this, I was like, man, there are so many huge names in this movie. That's crazy. And so many huge names on the soundtrack. And then you remember, everyone wanted to be a part of Michael Jordan and his return to basketball, and not even just like in general, everyone wanted to be a part of anything he was doing. He was just this golden boy of the 90s, and everything he did was so special, and this movie is no different. So large popcorn from me. I love it. I will definitely be watching it probably a lot more in the next few months now that I have it. And I might even break out that old CD and pop it into something that'll play it.
Put it in your computer, drop it on your phone.
My computers don't even have disk drives anymore. Laptops don't have disk drives anymore. I might just have to buy it on iTunes.
Maybe time to double dip and repurchase on that.
Might be.
I'll agree with you on something that everybody wanted to be a part of Michael Jordan's whatever in the 1990s. You just couldn't escape the guy. And to this day, I think he still has that kind of drawing power. This movie is exactly the kind of showcase you would want for the biggest sports star in the world. And you put him up against iconic cartoons like the Looney Tunes, and then you surround him with all of this good comedy and all this good music. It's a recipe for success. And the best thing about this movie, the smartest move of it, I'll go back again, is how darn simple it is and how short it is. Now, part of the shortness is probably because this is really hard to animate and make this work. It takes days to get like 3 seconds of film done. But also it's because it's a good economy on the screenplay and the script and everything else. It all still works. And all these years later, this movie still works. It's still a ton of fun, and it is totally worth watching. And if you're going to watch the new one, and who's not going to, if you've got HBO Max, you're going to check out, LeBron and all of that. you gotta watch the first one. You gotta watch the first Space Jam. And I imagine there will be more than a few passing nods to the old movie in the new one. So if you watch it and then watch the new one, I think you'll enjoy it when that comes out later this summer. But been a lot of fun. I'm going to join you in that large popcorn. I think it's that, and I would give that soundtrack that as well. That soundtrack is huge. So go throw that in your Spotify, throw it on your Apple Music, give that a listen, and see what you think. Folks, it's been a lot of fun talking about this here because it is basketball season. I mean, so we needed a basketball movie. And I mean, there's a ton of them out there, but Hoosiers is obvious. Blue Chips is a little dark and weird. And, some of those other ones are a little too cheesy. I mean, if you're going to do it, Space Jam's the way to go, I would say. This is definitely some of your March Madness watching too.
Absolutely.
So as you're filling out your office pool, even if you're doing it in distance like we all are working now, at least you can have a little Space Jam together. Everybody can have some fun with that. Throw that on your Friday Zoom happy hour call with everybody. And there'll be a lot of people in the room that go, oh, yeah, Space Jam. I remember that. Folks, thanks for listening to this latest episode of Film Strip. Follow us on social media at Film Strip Pod on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. That's where you can find links and posts about all of our upcoming shows. You can find a post to our Letterboxd page that has all of the movies we've reviewed. We're almost at episode 300, Lindsey, 11 years in here as we go. And of course, if you go to filmstrippodcast.com, that'll take you to our Anchor by Spotify page where you can find all the places you can find the show, Apple, Spotify, Google, you name it, we're there. Leave us a positive review, share the show with your friends, drop us a line too, let us know what you think of the movie and the review. We appreciate the support. So for Lindsey, I'm Jay. Thank you for listening to Film Strip.
Thank you for listening to Film Strip. You can find more episodes on our website, filmstrippodcast.com. The Film Strip theme music is produced and performed by Frozen Lake 121. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504, C2, Title 17.